Welcome to the Allotments Subcommittee. Fire evacuation procedure for Hamilton House. Welcome to the meeting. There are no fire alarms tests planned for today, and so should the fire alarm sound, it will be for real. In the event of a fire, please follow the instructions that will be given and congregate on the grass verge to the side of the Quick Fit building. The fire exits at the main stairwell to the reception area and a separate flight of stairs to the kitchen. In the interest of openness and transparency, councillors and members of the public are reminded that law permits any person to film, record, photograph or use social media in order to report on the proceedings of a meeting of the council or its committees when they are open to the public. The Town Council will record this meeting. Filming and photography will only be permitted from the area designated. No flash photography or additional lighting should be used without prior consent. Anyone wishing to report on the meeting should notify the clerk or chair so that they can be afforded reasonable facilities. People under the age of 18 or other members of the public not wishing to be filmed or photographed should notify the clerk or chair and should sit in the area designated for this purpose. Improper conduct or any disruptive behaviour could result in expulsion from the meeting. Can you also ensure that your mobile phones are changed to silent or switched off and adhere to the non-smoking policy for this building and the grounds of Hamilton House? So today we have councillors Andy Pearce and Neil Colby. Also we have Betty Jarrod from the Allotment Association, and clerking for us is Taylor Williams, our planning and committee clerk. Thank you. Right, so 69 to receive and consider acceptance of apologies. I think we're all here, aren't we?
Everyone's in attendance.
Thank you. 70, declarations of interest and dispensations. 70.1, to receive declarations of declosable, pecunial and other registrable and non-registrable interests from councillors on this agenda, items on this agenda. Andy?
I'm the current town council rep on the Allotment Association, but it's non-registrable because it's a non-voting position, so I take no part in management decisions, and B, the meetings in any case tend to coincide with full council, so I don't tend to be present for the regular meetings, and I see Betty on other occasions when we need to discuss anything.
Thank you. Betty?
I am the chairperson of the Stuffing District Allotment Association.
I thought you said I was going to be the chair personnel then. Couldn't sound like...
Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you. 70.2, to consider the written request for dispensations for interest and note dispensations granted. None as usual?
None received.
Thank you. 71, to consider the draft minutes of the meeting on the 19th of March 2025. Andy?
Just one slight amendment if I can. It says in the interest that I'm not a regular member of the Allotment Association. Could that just be clarified, because it is a formal member, but I'm not a voting member. And I don't, and I don't attend regularly for the reason I've explained, because it clashes with full council. But it is a formal rep position, but doesn't take part in any decision making. So that's the point I just wanted to make. But other than that, I would propose acceptance of the draft minutes.
Neil, second. All in favour? That's everyone. Thank you. So number 73, to receive costs and consider approval to install fencing and specific allotments to resolve the issue of the muntjac on allotment site. We are just waiting for Mark to come through to discuss that. So we'll move that to whenever we can get through here. So 74, to consider the supply of defibrillators and bleed kits, first aid kits to allotment sites. Anyone? I know we've discussed this in the past.
I think it was rolled over from last month because we were going to give some thought to what might be priority sites, because there might be some that are near other sites as the crow flies, but because of having to come out of an exit and go around as the crow flies might not be a useful measure. I mean, the Kirkley one's been a case in point where you actually can't walk the whole site. You have to come in and out through four separate entrances to actually go in the whole site. So the fact that there might be one within half a mile as the crow flies doesn't actually mean it's accessible for someone who has an accident on that site. And we were also looking at like the large sites in particular where there might be limited access for paramedics and emergency vehicles, as used to be the case at Normanston. If we had any other sites like that, then actually some kind of emergency thing like this might be useful if there was going to be a delay in getting emergency paramedics
Yeah.
to the site.
But I think it also didn't at the previous meeting, Taylor, I think you said that the bleed kits, you actually need to have training to actually use.
Have all members read the clerk's notes on the agenda
I
and
haven't,
the?
no.
I'm sorry, no.
That's fine.
I've been without my laptop, so.
Can read through what's on here. Yeah, so bleed kits contain specialist equipment, more so than a first aid kit, some of which requires specialist training to use. Bleed kits are typically used for stab wounds or traumatic injuries resulting in significant blood loss. From the officers, the suggestion is that a standard first aid kit would be more appropriate for the type of injury, which may generally be sustained on an allotment plot, but we would need to steer from allotments on this if that's the case. Site representatives and other nominated individuals will need to be in charge of checking these kits, replenishing any used contents, and regularly checking to ensure those contents are in date and usable. And then it's down to plot holders and the site reps to decide if they feel first aid kits would be beneficial in their use.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to add anything to that, Betty?
Yes, one of the site representatives at Margaret's has wondered if we would finance 4 persons to be first aiders on St Margaret's, it being a large site. And we're investigating whether one can get free first aid training courses. But nevertheless, it having 90, possibly 90 tenants, yeah, the person who needs the first aid treatment probably wouldn't have a first aider available. I think majority of tenants accept that it is their responsibility to have a little first aid kit, and they are aware that they could be the only person on the site, or certainly don't know of anybody else on the site.
Mm.
And although we're in a health and safety situation, we do have to take personal responsibility.
Yeah. I suppose it comes down to, they should know that when they have their allotment plots anyway, don't they? So what's with the defibrillators? Because looking for these plans, there's one quite close to all of them, isn't there? No, right?
So from Lauren's notes, so yeah, the maps were prepared, they were emailed around showing the proximity of allotment sites to existing defibs. So no allotment site is more than 1 mile away from an existing defib. And just the thing that was raised by the office, if we're going to consider installing them on allotment sites, we really do need to make sure it's going to be accessible to the general public as well. We need to make sure we can cater to everyone if they're going to be installed.
Okay, thank you. I honestly do not have Lauren's notes.
Oh, really?
Nope, they're not in any of the agendas.
Do you-
Anything.
Can I ask you, do you have any thoughts, Betty, on whether there are any allotment sites that might benefit from a defibrillator? Or is it something that you would perhaps want to raise at the next allotment association meeting to see what other members and site reps think?
No, we have discussed it, and your point about Kirkley Gardens is awkward because, as you say, you've got to come in and out. The only place to have it for the general public would be the bottom end, because you couldn't have it on any of those down that very pathway down to be at the bottom end, and therefore it would be accessible to members of the general public at that far end, the cemetery parking end.
Yeah.
Neil?
I'm just going to throw a ball here because I don't know the answer is, but I don't remember originally us actually having a proviso that defibrillators needed to be used, be able to be accessed by the public in every site where it's put. It was actually more a case of whether there was a likelihood that the activities at the site could cause kind of cardiac arrest or whatever. So to actually say they've got to be available to the public doesn't remember what that wasn't what was in the spirit of it originally, so I didn't know where that came about.
That's more kind of just the opinion of officers, just best practice for the town council. If someone were to have an undue accident, they're outside of the allotment plots and the allotment plot is locked up for the night, they can't get to that defib. It just isn't very good practice in that sense.
Andy?
I do get that, and like where a site can be found where it is publicly accessible and accessible to users, I obviously would support that. But obviously the primary purpose of this item is to consider defibrillator use for anybody using the allotment sites, particularly if there are accessibility difficulties that might delay getting paramedics or emergency vehicles to the site. So, you know, because we own those sites and they're used by a tenant, and we want to encourage the ongoing use, but we also want to make sure that essentially we're not putting people in harm's way by not providing adequate first aid or emergency treatment where it might be possible. But if, as Betty was saying, like on the Kirkley Gardens site, there is a site where it could be installed on an outside wall or gate and be accessible to both users and the public, then on that site we potentially have a solution. Is that something, Betty, that you would like us to explore, perhaps as a trial?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea. Obviously, you need somebody. If you're on your own and you have a heart attack, that's well, that's not it. But unless you are able to use your phone, you can't contact anybody anyway. But yeah, as a yeah, I think that's the only place that is less accessible.
Okay.
Okay. Neil?
On that point, Betty, I think you can get there are several organisations now that do free training on defibrillator use. A lot of them are actually a lot of them will actually talk through what you've got to do anyway. But there are several organisations out there who offer free training. If you get a group of people together to do it, it's that easy.
Betty?
No, you misunderstood.
Sorry.
Anybody can use these. And I'm just saying, if you happen to be on the site and there's nobody else, there wasn't nobody else that can do it. It was just,
No one else.
no one else.
Okay. So what would you like to do?
So I would like to propose that we ask our staff to take forward the suggestion that as a trial basis, we install a defibrillator at Kirkley Gardens on the outside wall or gate at the southern end, so that it is available to both users of the Kirkley Gardens site and members of the public, even when at night when the site's locked up, because it will be on the outside, it will be accessible to the public. And that we try it on that site, and then roll out to other sites if and as possible, but start with that one.
Fine. Neil?
Second.
Second. So all in favour? That's everyone. Thank you. Well, as Mark's now arrived, we should go back to number 73. Yeah. So you're here to talk about the muntjacs at the allotments.
The evil muntjacs, yes.
Put your thingy on.
Sorry,
That's-
I'm not used to this. Yeah, so I've done some plans just with some rough measurements on of what the areas that me and Betty looked round and saw where the potential issue for the muntjacs had gained an access to the allotment sites. As we spoke about before, this is just for the temporary fencing. I think would be a lot of work involved to even prep the site to even start thinking about putting a permanent fence up. As we know from some of the sites we've seen, where you can hardly see where the fence and the boundary line is. So we discussed the best option would be some Harris fencing as a temporary option. There's the distances on there and cost for the materials for the temporary fencing. Obviously, there isn't any labour charge on there. Obviously, most of it would be done in-house by the ground staff team. But there would be some work to be carried out by the allotment holders to actually clear the space to give us access to be able to install the temporary fence.
So why temporary?
Purely because the over the time as the allotments have been cleared, structures have been put up, sheds have been put in place, we can't actually get to the full boundary line of where the permanent fence would need to be.
So there's no point doing little bits. No.
No.
Okay.
So the most logical option would have been is to put a temporary fencing up. It doesn't need concreting in. They're 6 foot tall panels just over. So I think it was 5 foot was the requirement for the muntjacs not to be able to jump over. It's a galvanised steel fence, so it's external graded, longevity. We wouldn't have to paint it to maintain it. And I think that would be the simplest way to actually give some protection to the sites for the muntjacs.
And it will give you flexibility.
Exactly. They're 3.2 metre long panels, so we can steer round some objects.
Yeah. The prices don't seem too bad. You take labour costs out, everything comes down, doesn't it?
Considerably, yeah.
Do we, sorry, do you have an actual, Andy's always looking through them at the moment, is there an actual cost for all of them together?
So the 4 that me and Betty looked at, there's one for each of the 4 sites that we looked at, which are the ones that are a particular problem that the allotment holders were reporting back to Betty.
No, sorry, I was meaning, what is the total cost? I didn't know, I had it written down somewhere. You've got this individually,
Well,
but.
we've got 2309 for Cape Gardens and potentially another £600 to £700. Because in some sections the banks which have been formed will need to be dug back to allow the fence to be installed. This will require the host and specialist plant. So if we say 700 quid, so that's about £3 for Cape Gardens.
Yep.
And then 2309 for Wilmington. So that takes us to 53. And then Saxon Road, we've got 929 for material costs. And again, there's a 2 metre high wooden panel fence, last section damaged, another 850, so that's 1700. So that's £7 and then 423 for Blackheath Road. So that's about £7.5 all told.
Yep.
So
You haven't got your mic on, Andy.
sorry, so adding that up across the 4 sites, the fencing without labour, because it will be done in-house, but the additional cost where we've got to replace an existing permanent fence or dig back an embankment to allow the fence to be installed. So the total cost across the 4 sites for the large stretches is going to be about £7,000. So my proposal would therefore be that we approve the unless Betty wants to come in with anything different, but mine was going to be that we approve the installation for Kirkley Gardens within this subcommittee's budget, which is 2309 material costs plus an additional £600 to £700 for the hire of specialist plant to dig back the embankments to allow the fencing to be installed. So if we say, so that's £3,000. So if we say 3,250 provisionally to give us a bit of a buffer, and then recommend the others to aid.
Yep.
And ask those to approve those.
Betty?
Since Mark has visited, we've actually put up some I've paid for fencing I haven't paid yet, fencing to be put up on Longacre and Saxon Road. So I think it'd be quite useful for Mark to come back and have a look and see what we've done, because it became quite imperative because a person was scared. And you can't have somebody who daren't go on their plot because 2 muntjac deers are there. So we've done some work there. So that may cut down some of the costs, but it'd be worthwhile you come and have a little look.
Yeah, if there's been any changes, I think it'd be worthwhile. Like I say, it was it took a little bit of time to figure out whose the wooden fence was.
Well, yeah. Anyway.
So do you want us to hold fire on the Saxon Road one until there's another visit? Yeah. I've got Wilmington, Blackheath and Kirkley Gardens.
That's fine. So just leave Saxon Road because it is both sides.
Okay. So my proposal, therefore, is that we approve a budget of 3,250 under this subcommittee's delegations as maximum budget to do the work at Kirkley Gardens, which is estimated at 2,309 for the basic fencing plus potentially 700 quid for the hire of specialist equipment to dig back the embankments in certain areas to allow for the installation. So we approved that under this subcommittee's delegations, and then the other two, 2309 for Wilmington and 423 for Blackheath. We recommend those to aid for approval, and that'd be my proposal.
Neil, second. All in favour? That's everything. Is there anything else you need to add, Mark?
Just if you wouldn't mind, Betty, is if we're going to do the Coakley Gardens one, if we could arrange to meet up there, just so we could run through. Obviously, we've got some bits that we're going to have to steer the fence round. It would be nice just if we could look and agree the route and the location, because some of them might lose a small section of their existing plot just because we can't work on the cemetery side. But if we could arrange that, that would be great. Thank you.
It would be better to have the site rep than me, but better still if we could both coordinate that. So if you, after the meeting, you just send me some times when you be suitable to you.
Yeah, perfect.
Good. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I don't think you've got anything else to talk on, have you?
Don't think so, no.
Well, you can leave if you like. Go and have a coffee.
Thank you very much.
You can stay if you want, but
I mean, what's the next subject?
One more, are we?
no, discuss with Lowestoft District allotments on possible funding for Lowestoft Bloom Award. Would you like to talk about that?
Oh, I don't know anything about that. I'm allowed to cut the grass.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so number 75, to consider a discussion with Lowestoft District Allotments Ltd on possibility of funding a Lowestoft Bloom Award for the environmentally friendly allotments. Any, Neil?
This was my suggestion, Chair, because it's something I had in my mind going back a few years ago, that there are some really great allotments out there that are doing some remarkable work on sustainability and how they tackle difficulties with not having water on site, how they deal with solar power on site and things like that. And that, in a way, is something that we as a council, through the climate emergency and everything, should be looking at actually recognising and kind of briefing out what has done, so that it can reach a wider community. Not just kind of allotment holders, but people might even want to consider it where they've actually got their own gardens or something, and with the rainfall being less, more at times and less at others, so you can store it. It may well be a consideration out there. And I was just looking at us actually having a trophy of some kind that we could agree with the Lowestoft Bloom that could be awarded as part of it, because they do an allotment part of Lowestoft Bloom already, and they do the best allotments prizes and so on. And this would just be an additional one to go with that, to actually highlight what's going on.
Okay. Anyone else? Andy? Oh, Betty, sorry.
Well, it was really going to be a question to Betty. So was basically if Lowestoft Town Council were to fund such a trophy, subject to Lowestoft Bloom being agreeable that it's awarded under the banner of their annual awards, which we would need to take up with them, is it something that you would like us to work with on the allotments, provided it was funded like from the town council?
My hand was going up and says, has anybody contacted Lowestoft Bloom?
That's going to be my next.
Because some members of my committee are also members of that committee, and I know how stretched they are.
Okay.
So I'm not against it, but I do know when they also give, as you say, allotment, I have to really encourage people to decide they would like to be inspected by people. So that is, yeah, but people are quite reluctant because maybe they feel those aren't going to be good enough, whatever. But, some people, yeah, and are really pleased when they do get recognised. So, yeah, but I think before we go any further, check with Lowestoft in Bloom that that's not another, yeah.
Well, I was actually thinking, because this year we'd actually be cutting it quite fine anyway, won't it? So it might be something to look into for next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andy?
So we would have had to have spoken with Lowestoft in Bloom anyway, obviously to get their permission for an award to be made in their name. So can I therefore propose that we ask our staff to have exploratory discussions with Lowestoft in Bloom as to whether they would be open to such an award being instituted from next year, provided it was at the town council's expense. You know, there's no suggestion that they pay for it, but asking that it can be awarded under the banner of their their annual prize giving, whether they would be amenable to that. And depending on the outcome of that discussion, would staff bring it back to the next meeting for consideration?
Hi, Neil. Oh, Betty, sorry.
Who will be the inspectors?
Neil?
I hadn't really thought of that one. I mean, I know Lowestoft in Bloom will obviously come out and do those. I did it with them when I was on the committee. I did the allotments with David Banks. But it would be something that if needs be, one of us could go out with them just to confirm things, or someone from the climate committee even could actually go out and actually do it, because they have no involvement whatsoever. They could arrange with Lowestoft in Bloom to accompany them, but it's actually something that could be discussed with Lowestoft in Bloom, is how they'd like to run it.
But also, if we just make it clear when we contact them that it's for an in principle, to get their in principle, to find out whether in principle they're supportive, then if they were, then we could discuss the fine detail and the practicalities with the allotment association, knowing that Lowestoft in Bloom were on board in principle. Would that be okay?
That's fine.
So we had a proposal. Did we have a seconder? No, Neil seconds. So all in favour? That's everyone. Right, so we're on the last, what's 76, to consider matters relating to the lease with Lowestoft and District Allotments. That's all confidential still?
Yeah, I've just got a update for you.
Okay, so number 77, date of the next meeting is Wednesday, the 21st of May, 2025 at 10:30. But will that still be going ahead on that time?
Yeah, I kind of went on autopilot and put that down, but it won't be happening on that date because we have the AGM on the 20th, and then the schedule is decided afterwards.
Yeah.
So it will be at the earliest time we're able to, and we'll speak with Betty to let Betty know what's being discussed and what dates will be looked at. And yeah, so it'll probably be June, I expect, will be the next meeting.
That's great, thank you. So any items for the next agenda, please send them to Taylor. So 79, to resolve that under the Public's Body Administrations of Meetings Act 1960, the public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that publicity would be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, namely any legal issues relating to the matters on the agenda. Andy?
Suppose we go into confidential session.
Neil?
Second.
All in favour? That's everyone. Thank you for watching.